Do you have a little treasure trove of stories about yourself, how you got to where you are today, whether that's in your personal or your professional life? And have you been holding back in actually trying to share more of those in your day to day to help share why you might be the professional that people should choose to work with? Hopefully, my guest today is going to help urge you to just open up that little treasure chest and start to share more, because these stories are really important in your personal brand and helping to bring that human out from behind the work. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Brand Compass, conversations to navigate your way to building a brand fit for purpose and poised for success. Here's your host, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘.
Hello there, my friend, and welcome back. This is the place where we get together and we chat about all the ways in which your personal brands meets the humans you serve. I'm 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘, your host on this conversational journey, and today we're adding to my series of conversations with subject matter experts who come on to share how they're faring out in the world, shaping a version of themselves that they are happy to share with the outside world, and what that looks and feels like for them. Today I have one of my oldest business friends coming on to join us in our conversation today, and we met back in 2007, 2008 when I first went self-employed as a franchise consultant. So she's got a phenomenal life story that spans 7 decades and multiple continents, and she's had to navigate quite a few crossroads in her personal life where being true to herself was truly the common denominator that kept her at the top of her game that she chose to play. Curious? Great. Let me give you a little introduction to her and then we'll get cracking. So after training as a trade and tech journalist and international editor in her early working years and a brief flirtation with public relations, Penny Hopkinson spent over a decade as a social economics correspondent and travel writer reporting on the emerging Arabian Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. Here she interviewed ministers, merchants, and members of the ruling families. For almost 4 decades, however, her professional specialism has been in the world of franchising and licensing. She's the UK's go-to expert on planning and developing engaging operations manuals. She's written an Amazon #1 bestseller, Manual Magic: Create the Operations Manual Your Franchisees Need to Succeed. Now, this is actually being used as the definitive work of its type endorsed by the British Franchise Association. Never one to stand still, our Penny. This year, she founded Manual Magic AI, which turns her Manual Magic 3-part process into a done with you, done by you SaaS product, making SOP and operations manual development up to 75% faster and cheaper. We'll get into how these professional pivots have actually moved her through her lifetime. But for now, Penny lives in Warwickshire with her husband, Stephen. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Oh, right. So now we've got to pick a place to start, Penny, on this big story of Penny's life. I don't think I've ever had anyone in a series where we spent almost 2 hours in our prep conversation just walking through your life, let alone the bits that we actually want to get into today. So I think what I'm going to do is, to start us off, I'm going to maybe focus on what I think are the 3 big professional kind of pivots or changes you've had in your life. And then maybe that can just kind of kick us off into what else we want to do. So some of these, I feel like they were in your control. And like the rest of us, when the economics of the world turns upside down, it's outside of our control. But there were some decisions for you that you chose because you lent into them, because you were drawn to them. So correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that the 3 changes were, #1, you were in the trade and tech journalism, the PR, and then your journalism into quality management, and then from quality into ops manuals for businesses. So can you maybe share with us how you feel like you managed to navigate these big shifts in careers without actually losing your mind?
Yes, that's a really good one, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘. Well, from the age of 16, I knew I wanted to go into trade and tech journalism. And that was because my tutor at college suggested that might be an option when I wrote an article on the art of the hot wire cutter. Why on earth would I do this?
Of the what?
Well,
What?
the art of the hot wire cutter. To say it was unusual, but it was obviously to draw her attention to what I might want to do in the future. And that was probably subconsciously, because my father was an engineer and he used to take me into his factory and he used to say, "Oh, I've just bought this. This is what it does. This is how it does it. Now you do it." And there was a hot wire cutter, and it was new, and it cut those horrible expanded polystyrene blocks that we all hate and all stick to you and they
yeah.
And the hot wire cutter was about 600 degrees, which was very, very hot. I was 12 and I was put in charge of it. And so he said, this is what you do. This is how it does it. And now you go. And I remember the first time that I cut the block precisely and it plopped into the bucket below. And there was a sort of sense of pride. I mean, it does sound rather strange now, but for a 12-year-old, that was, I was pleasing my father. He was absolutely proud that I'd done it. And afterwards, when my mother found out, she was horrified, absolutely horrified. We didn't have health and safety in factories in those days. So that was the first inkling I had of what I wanted to be. And as so many of us did in those days, we were sent off to college to be good shorthand typists, become secretaries, personal assistants, and then marry a farmer and settle down and have a family. But I had completely different ideas. I was the most awful shorthand typist. In fact, after 3 months, I was fired. And then I tried desperately to get into any publishing house I could. And finally, at the age of 21, I managed to join Northwood Publishing. And they were a trade and tech house, they were a union house. And Dr. 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦, who is the editor of Hospital Building and Engineering and Health Service Hygiene and Equipment, decided to take a flyer and employ me.
Good God, that's a title.
I know. So I learnt about health, the hospital building and engineering and all sorts of things like that. And I was an editorial assistant for 3 months, and then they made me an assistant editor. And I thought, this is good. I really enjoy this. 2 years later, I went on to printing publications, did occupational safety and health, social services, and a whole range, ending up as editor of Media International, the European Journal for Planners of International Advertising, where I travelled the world, spent most of my weeks with Time magazine, Fortune, Financial Times dining room, the Ritz. It sounds really glamorous, and actually it was. In my late 20s, it was a fabulous life, and the people I met were wonderful, and that led me to be able to have a network of contacts when I left Media International. And my brief foray into public relations, which was 6 months. But I learnt the basics, so that was important. But I drew on my network from Media International and started to find out how I could move forward as a freelance journalist. And eventually, one of my old contacts came to me and said, "I'm launching Gulf Air's first in-flight magazine. Would you become the editor?" And then it was Kuwait Airways and then Iran Air. And so I started to go to the Middle East. I became a socio-economics correspondent around the Arabian Gulf and had a wonderful 10-year, nearly 12-year career actually, interviewing ministers, merchants and members of the ruling families. And it was a fabulous time after the oil crisis, all the petrodollars, absolutely fantastic. But life became politics. and it was a platform for all the other major publications to talk politics. It was the time of the PLO, and it was quite a dangerous time, and politics was not really my thing. I've always been interested, and of course you can't not be, but I stick to economics. So what was I going to do? The publications I was writing for got smaller and smaller because they weren't backed by new shiny projects. And so I was looking around, and my old editor of Electrical Contractor and Retailer came to me and said, Penny, I'm working for the Institute of Purchasing and Supply, and we're looking for a quality correspondent. How about it? And I thought, well, working with Bob would be terrific, because he's full of life, great fun, and quality sounds rather interesting. And I was in the introduction, I was there for the introduction of the white paper on quality, because the British government quite rightly understood that manufacturing need a real kick up, the proverbial, to get our quality.
Remind us the time this was, roundabout.
This was the late, it was about the mid-80s. So we had a very bad name for car manufacturing. In fact, we were becoming a laughing stock. So the government stepped in, white paper on quality, which became BS 5750, which became ISO 9000 series. And I was fascinated by quality and how companies could align quality principles and grow by small incremental steps that improve their systems. So I thought, I wonder, with the ISO, or as it was then BS 5750 accreditation, you had to have a manual. It was the most dull document you could ever imagine. Really stultifying. And I thought, well, I'm sure there's a better way, and not everybody wants to be accredited, but they do want to work to quality principles. And I was fascinated with TQM, Total Quality Management, quality circles, and Kaizen, the Japanese version. And that led me to explore a new business called Manual Writers International, where I served companies who needed a manual but didn't need to have formal accreditation. And I did a proof of concept with Lloyd's of London, the corporation, which led to a 2-year contract. And my first manual after that was a franchise. What on earth is a franchise? I had to learn very quickly that this model is absolutely fantastic if you want to grow a business. So I worked with 𝗧𝗪𝗜𝗦, which was then just 𝗧𝗪𝗜𝗦, it's now BDO 𝗧𝗪𝗜𝗦, the consultants and a retail specialist, and I hoovered everything I could find out about franchising. And we produced a quality management based on my principles and franchising. And that seemed to go down quite well.
And now you have your business.
And now I have my business. And so for the last 35 or so years, I've been helping businesses create world-class operations manuals and developing ways to make it easier, cheaper, and more attractive for the target audience.
So now, Penny, while we were chatting in our prep conversation, because we're going to get a little bit into some of those other bits a bit later. But what I wanted, there was a little thing in your story when we had our conversation when you were working in the Gulf states that really piqued my interest, because you said there was a little thing that you said that some of the high profile people, including the ministers and the ruling families, they only wanted you to particularly interview them. Can you share with the listeners why you succeeded where others failed in actually getting to have those conversations? I'm just trying to pull out there's a huge, massive value and strength in you, Penny, and it's your building of relationships. I want to kind of like move into that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Just before I started working in the Gulf states, a book was published, and it exposed the lives of mainly the Saudis and how they lived day to day. And it was not flattering in the least. And the people who had hosted the author had trusted her without understanding how a newspaper journalist could turn their lives into something that was absolutely not appropriate. And so journalists were not welcome. Female journalists were doubly unwelcome because they were afraid. There was no trust. There wasn't this know-like trust, which is so important in the Gulf states. It is everywhere, but particularly in an emerging group of countries where they're feeling their way to support from other countries and how people can make or break their way of life, their culture. And so I went out of my way to ensure, first, I was not a journalist or a correspondent. My card simply stated editor. I made it an absolute point of saying, don't tell me anything that you would not want to tell your granny, and you wouldn't want to tell the world. And we had so many wonderful open conversations, I can't tell you. It was a really special time, because building those relationships, you built them at a Minister of Information level. And once you were trusted and they knew, I mean, my speciality was front cover stories for an Arabic publication, which was like Business Week in the States, but monthly. And if you were featured on that, everybody who appeared felt it was the best kudos they could have. And I did so many interviews that when I went to one country, there was a sort of talisman ahead to say that I was coming to another country, one of the other Gulf states, and I had another lovely queue of people wanting to be interviewed. So I never had a lack of a source of really interesting people to interview.
I think what also helped was this element where you were, were you the first woman to be granted a Saudi visa to cross the Saudi Arabian Pipeline? Do you want to tell us? Because by doing that experience, you could actually talk about their country, couldn't you?
Yes, absolutely. It's really funny how these opportunities arise. And I was never really one for joining the expat community, because you don't really learn much apart from the bad things about a country. So I was in Oman, which is, I always call it my spiritual home because it is so special. And it was, I think it must have been my sixth or seventh trip. And I was staying at the Gulf Hotel, which was my all-time favourite port of call. I knew the general manager, Mike McFadden, really well. And so he always hosted me. But I used to go down and play table tennis. And there's always an expat community down there. And one person was finishing his tour of duty as a sound engineer after a couple of years. And he was a German, Jürgen. And he said, I'm finishing my tour of duty. I want to take my car back. And I thought, why take your car back? He said, well, it's a Chevrolet Camaro, racing green. It's one of only 2 in the country. And I kind of love it. And he said, I don't want to ship it because they might drop it on the quayside. Would you come with me? Well, I was car sick after about 10 miles. All my childhood was absolutely loathing anything above a 10-mile trip. And I said to him, I'll think about it for 24 hours and let you know. Well, within a minute, I said, okay, yeah, I'll go. So we had to get visas for every country up to, I think it was the old Yugoslavia. So we went from Muscat to Stuttgart. We got our carnet de passage, but the one sticking point was a visa for me because I was travelling with somebody who was not my husband, and going across Saudi like that was going to be very difficult. Well, my marvellous friends and the first family to embrace me in Oman, they had a cousin working in the Saudi consulate. And actually, I think he was probably the consul. And so I got my Saudi visa. But it did have to be renewed in Kuwait. So with 15 minutes and me not really being a map reader, the sea was on the inside or inland, and we almost missed getting my renewal. But we did it. But, you know, communication, getting back to your point, Shelley, communication is the essence of all relationships. And I can't thank my father enough for teaching me an ability to, and you learn by osmosis, obviously, the ability to communicate at any level. It was just wonderful.
Oh,
wonderful.
Bless you. Oh, so many stories. God, right. Let's go back. So you're focused now on being a systems and operations manual specialist, right? So that's since the mid-80s. And through all of the stories that you've told me also during our prep conversation is there's this common thread of you working really hard on these key relationships, and like you just mentioned, being able to speak to people at all these different levels as well. And you've also worked with so many different big names as well, like Costa Coffee, Premier Inn, you know, Quick Fit, the AA, Wiltshire Farm Foods and whatnot as well. But did you ever want to grab another convertible, stick the dog in and Stephen and just like disappear again?
It had kind of crossed my mind, but then I'm somebody who likes doing and creating and seeing what comes next. And over the pandemic, it was the book. And I was very fortunate to be guided towards an opportunity, and I became a member of a US mastermind group headed by Dan Janal back in 2020, early 2021. Again, a chance meeting, but I've been a member of that mastermind for a good 5 years. Yes, nearly 5 years now. And what I learned was we had guest experts on the second meeting of the month. And some of the people we were able to talk to, you know, like Bob Berg of The Go-Giver. We had the most amazing opportunity to really understand publishing, where to position books, how to do everything you needed. And I chose a hybrid publisher, and it was the very best choice. And Rethink Press published my book in 2023 October, so it's nearly 2 years old. And that disrupted the whole concept of writing an operations manual. I set out, and this is going to be a complete anomaly, I set out to make SOPs sexy. Yes, it is a bit unbelievable.
My goodness me.
A bit unbelievable.
But I think what you've managed to do, though, Penny, over the years is to, while you've pivoted your roles and your jobs, so it's always been at the bed of it, has been writing, has been communication, has been keeping connections going as well. And I think because you've got just this weight of years as well as deep practical experience as well, I feel like you are a subject matter expert. I know you don't like the word, but how would you describe the phrase of subject matter expert now in light of all these many decades and many people and humans and professionals you've spent time with over that time? What's your definition of a subject matter expert?
I think it's somebody who uses a content strategy creatively so that it maximizes communication and has the power to elevate brand. In my case, it's personal brand. I never understood the meaning of personal brand until we had LinkedIn and Facebook and all the social media platforms. But it is so important because you are what you do. It's very plain. If you can't communicate, you're not going to be able to communicate what you do and its benefits. And I'm all about serving, because I've now been in the business for so long that it's a delight to be able to do something or propose something that will make a difference, however small. And you don't always have to look at it in terms of pounds and pence.
I think that because you've got so many years of experience, though, I feel like you've got a very concentrated zone of experience as well, which for me makes you a specialist. But I think what I love about you is that you're this learner at the same time, but also you're able to, like you just said, in terms of communicating, you're able to decide ahead of time, depending on the person in front of you, how much information they need at that point in terms of how you move them along the point of them understanding whatever it is that you're trying to explaining. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense, because you obviously need to start somewhere, and if you can open that communication channel and then help them along to the journey that they need to get to, or the destination they need to get to. If you're part of it, or you can pull in other experts to be part of it, then everybody wins. And franchising is one of those rare, I say it's industry, but that's only a term. But the community in franchising, even competitors support one another. I have the lovely Louise, who she has entered the operations manual space only in the last few years. But we have regular meetings, we delight in each other's company. And I think this is what it's about. It's serving our clients in the best way we know how. She has special skills, I may have special skills, and together we do the best we can.
And earlier you brought up personal brand, so let's carry on with our defining over here now and just talk a little bit about personal brand, because I know that your dad had an influence on you when it comes to this topic. So do you want to tell me firstly what you think personal brand is, and then how your dad actually gave you this osmosis learning about personal brand?
I think personal brand is really how you come across to other people, and whether you fit into their ideal supplier or client. But with my father, it was all about doing business on a personal level, never delegating the important task of the one-to-one conversation, the way, the manner in which you represent what you do and who you are. And I think I think it does take some years to understand who you are, because we're so busy developing the skills for what we want to be. And at a fairly advanced age, we won't go into that too much today, but...
At a shiny 55.
Oh yeah, thank you, 21 again, several times. But I think you do get to this comfortable level where you know who you are, you know where you've been, you can look down that mountain and chart that path and say, goodness me, I never actually planned it this way, but there is something innate that has made me develop in this way. And it was my father, pure and simple. He'd love to show me exactly how something worked, what something was. He bought a powerful microscope to show me his mineral collection and how minerals were made up. And there were just so many things. He'd take me with him around National Trust properties. He had a love of not all antiques, but bronzes in particular. And he'd take me with him and say, now this is why I love this particular piece. So it's an appreciation of the world around you and what the part you can play in making it better.
Yeah. Lovely, lovely. So there's a question I like to ask all of my guests, and it's this bit about a flow state, right? So when we're actually in the state where, for people, the flow state is different. So for some people, they're really calm, relaxed, and peaceful. I know my friend 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗚𝗘𝗟𝗟, who's the wildlife artist, that's how he feels in his flow state. And then I've had other guests on who are highly energized, and they've, time just flies, everything is just moving. You're very excited while you're doing the thing that you love. So my question to you is, what does your flow state look like? And what is it that you're doing when you know that time's just flying and you're doing what you love doing? What does that look and feel like for you?
Oh my goodness, that's how it's been for the last 2 years since I published the book. It's been incredible. Every day there's something new. Every day there's something I need to do to either promote the book or the new business, which we'll obviously touch on a bit later.
We'll talk about it.
But,
yeah.
But the flow is being excited about Monday morning and knowing that your week ahead is filled with wonderful things like Shelley's podcast. And really, it is so true, because if I look through my diary for the last 2 years, it's taken me in unexpected new areas that I never thought I'd have in my life. But Daniel Priestley said, of Dent International, he said, the book that you write is the one that changes your life. and it has truly changed mine.
Because you are a key person of influence now, which is Dan's thing, isn't it?
Well, I'm trying desperately to
Yeah.
get all those little bits into, I think there are 7,
Yes.
aren't there? All the little bits,
Yes.
and I think I probably succeeded, except for the last one.
Okay. All right. Are we going to say what the last one is or not?
Well, never wants to stand still. And, when most people have been retired for at least a decade, I've been passionate about AI since I first got my hands on ChatGPT in October 2021. I knew it was going to do something for me, not just to help me write content, give me some ideas and just be my useful assistant, which it definitely is. I thought it would eventually play a part in doing something that was really, I say life-changing in the context of being able to create manuals better, faster, more easily. And at the beginning of this year, I decided to try a prototype to be able to upload intellectual property, sort it into my 3-step process, project manage it, build storyboards, and reimagine an operations manual as a dynamic knowledge sharing environment in which everybody, and I mean the teams, can participate, learn and grow.
And also you had an eye on these new generations coming up, didn't you? So
Absolutely.
The ones who are the TikTokers, the short
Yes.
attention spans, trying to get
Yes.
information out in a useful way.
Yes. I mean, the key thing is that we have up to 5 generations under one workplace now. I'm at the one end, the baby boomer. Then we've got Gen Z at the other end. And we are worlds apart. But up to 30% of the global workforce is going to be under 30 in a very short time. And therefore, we've got to understand
it's 2030, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. And we have to understand that what they want and how they want to interact with the company they work for. They choose the company they want to work for because they want to align with their values. They want to feel valued. They want to be engaged. They want to feel that they're making a contribution. They are the leaders of tomorrow. So under 40s, Gen Z will not read loads of heavy text. And I don't blame them because they're the YouTube, Instagram, TikTok generations. And we have to treat this differently if we want to replicate a system. It is
Lovely.
It's meeting them where they learn.
Nice. Love it. Oh, Penny, I've had so much fun. I'm going to have to pull it together now. We're coming to the end of our time.
I know, hasn't it gone
Thank you
quickly?
so much. I really appreciate you coming. I know, it has. You're one of those people in my life who've been the epitome of kind and constantly marvellous, honestly. I think I've known you almost 20 years now. And I have to say, without a doubt, you've always been this really highly professional and proficient in any interactions I've seen with you, with other people, or even with me. And I'm really glad you're being recognized in your field because you're at the top of your game and you have been for a long time, and you're a role model for all these, like you're talking about Louise, these up and coming professionals in your space as well. And not only have you had a rich and what looks like fulfilling career, but you've also accumulated this treasure chest of phenomenal stories, which you can easily thread into any conversation, which no doubt endears you to so many people. And I know you don't like the word expert, but for me, you're a sterling example of a subject matter specialist who's You're a hungry learner. You're striving for excellence all the time, and you really take responsibility for how you share and you instill your knowledge. And I really love that. So I feel like the weight of the years and the expertise that you have, you're also a thought leader, I think, in your field. You see things coming before everybody else does, and you're able to very clearly communicate effectively to people that matter with your eye-wateringly good connections that you have now, that you've accumulated over the years. If somebody's listening today, so they want to learn more about you, about Manual Magic, where can they go to do that? And then do you want to let us know about the wait list as well?
There are two ways. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. And then the other place is my link tree, which is the link tree / Penny Hopkinson. And we launched the wait list about the time of the 22nd, but the formal launch of the wait list to get on Manual Magic AI as a founder member or subscriber goes out on the 16th of September.
It may well be that this episode's going to go out after those dates, but it's absolutely fine. I'm going to share that detail anyway on my socials so nobody's missed out on it as well. But thank you again, my love. Thank you for coming on.
Gosh, it's been such a pleasure, Shelley. It's been delightful. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And that's it for this episode today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. So, what did you think about that? I know we didn't get into all of Penny's stories, and you did get a little touch of some of them, but there are many. And what really solidified for me in our chat today and in our prep conversation is that you really, really get new insights into people when you learn their stories. What nuggets do you have stored away and you haven't thought about or shared in years? Take some time, pull them out and start to share them again. You'll be surprised what will actually draw people to you. They don't just want to know about your work. They want to connect and they want to get to know you as the human behind the work. And stories help. The biggest thing that stood out for me with Penny is that she's used her two big skills of relating to people and communication to pull through some of her really tough career pivots and shifts over many, many decades. She's also been really smart about looking for opportunities for where else she can actually use her knowledge and skills. So many of us forget to do that. She didn't really wait for things to come to her. She made use of her network and her connections to just pick at threads and find opportunities where she could to market her skills more. And she's still doing that today. Her reputation has become one of her biggest assets. From an early age, she learned the importance of this from her father. She maintained relationships where she built them, and she put a lot of effort into paying attention to people along the way and giving back where she could to keep goodwill up. This is a key element to building your personal brand. Deciding what your driving values are, staying true to them, and then building your reputation around them. Articulating your driving values and gaining clarity on what your strengths are that underpin your reputation is a big part of doing personal brand strategy work. If you'd like to chat to me about doing this important, effective, and direction-giving work, then please drop me a line and I'd love to book in a chat with you. I'll pop my details in the show notes together with all of Penny's details from today as well. So who do you know who could do with hearing this conversation and Penny's story? Share this episode. You know you want to. Until next time, my friend, stay strong, believe you have value, and make good brand decisions.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Compass. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with your entrepreneurial friends and help them make good brand decisions. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going at 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘𝗟𝗟.